Hello everyone and welcome to our computing session for today. We are going to be continuing with the theme of e-safety, so being safe online. We've already talked about how to use websites safely and how to create secure passwords. And today we're going to look at trusting what you can see. So can you trust what you see online? And we're going to look at some more things that you might be sharing when you're online and whether that's safe and how you could make it safer. So just think about what sort of things you might see online that are not true. So if you pause the video, just have a little think, what sort of things might you see when you're online, when you're playing games or reading information, maybe looking at news articles or reading blogs? What sort of things might you see that are not true? Let's have a little think. So I've put a couple of websites up here, which I will put in the chat of our Microsoft Teams account so that you can have a look at these. And these are just a couple of things that you can look at to see the sort of things that people are putting online. And then there's a little quiz which you can take to see if you can spot fake news. So you need to think about where you're going online and whether you can 100% trust what is on there. So what sort of websites might we be thinking of that we could trust? So you might think of something like BBC, the BBC News, that might be more trustworthy than other things we look at. Perhaps official websites. So if you support a football team like, I don't know, Tottenham, like a lot of you do, if you went on their website, the news on there is probably more likely to be trustworthy than if you were to follow maybe a fan on Twitter who isn't an official member of the club. So just think about the sort of websites that you might visit and how trustworthy they are. So if you look at these websites, they'll also give you a better idea of the tricks that people might play online. And what you might think about is, what could you do if you come across something you're not 100% sure is trustworthy? Let's have a pause and have a little think about that. So I wonder what ideas you've come up with. So a couple of things you could do is you could do what we've talked about before and check with an adult, and then maybe they could have a look and see if they think it's trustworthy. You could also check on different websites. So if you find, for example, a fact about something and you think, oh, that sounds a bit too good to be true, you could also do a little Google search and see if there's any other websites that say that, and if there's websites that you know you've seen before and you trust. And if it's on a few of them, then it's probably more likely to be true. If it's just on one website, then maybe it's not as trustworthy. But you can have a little think about what sort of things you might be able to do to ensure that you can believe what you see. You could also think about why might people want to be making things up and putting them on the internet. See what ideas you come up with for that. Okay, so we're going to move on to our activity for the day. So our activity for the day, I have said that you should create a profile in Microsoft Word, as if you have access to it. If not, you could draw one. You might decide to use something like PowerPoint instead. PowerPoint tends to be easier if you're using pictures, but I just thought if you could have a go at using Microsoft Word to just become more familiar with using that program, because it's probably something that you'll be using a lot more moving forward, especially when you get into secondary school and beyond. So if you just become familiar with using that, that could be really useful. But if you prefer to do it in something else, then obviously you can do that. So the idea is I want you to create a profile for your character or for you for a new game that you're playing. And you need to decide what sort of information you are sharing and then have a think if it is safe or not. So we have already talked about in quite some depth in class what sort of information you should or shouldn't be sharing. And many of you might have some online profiles already, so you could have a quick look at them or just have a think about the sort of information you've got on there. For example, if you are on the Xbox, you probably have a profile on there. You might have a picture, you might have a couple of bits of information about yourself. So you could look at that and see what kind of information companies ask for when you are creating these profiles. So I'm going to show you now a profile that I have created. And I would like you to just have a little think about whether you think this is a good profile for me to use on a new game that I've bought. So without casting aspersions on the picture, we'll mostly concentrate on the writing, but we will come back to the picture. So I have included my name, where I work, an address, a date of birth, and a phone number. And obviously there's a picture of me there as well. So if you just pause the video and just note down a few things you think about that. Is that a good idea for me to do? Or is that a bad idea? So just pause here, have a little think. So I think this is not a particularly good example of a profile that you could set up. This might be a profile that our school has about me, because they have it in a secure place. But if I was buying a game and putting all this information up about me, then I'm giving all this information out to strangers that I've never met, and anyone can access it, and anyone can phone me, and anyone can come and find where I live or where I work. So I don't think it's a very good idea to be sharing any of that information. So when you make your profile, just think about the sort of things you shouldn't be sharing. So should you share your full name? Should you have a picture of yourself? Should you have where you go to school and where you live? Should you have your phone number on there? So I'd be really interested to see if you could put on either Teams or Tapestry. You send us a photo of the sort of profile that you come up with, or if you've made it on Word or PowerPoint, you could send a file that we could have a look at and see what profile you've come up with, what avatar you are using to represent you and your personality. Maybe you could include some of your interests. So I'll leave that with you. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what you come up with for your profile for your new game.